From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself, and celebrating the things we love. I'm Kat Knapsack. Welcome to Blank is Why We Love Star Wars. Years ago, I wrote a selling book about Star Wars and all the little things that we love, and now we here at ForceCenter are celebrating those things with our friends, and including friends who are also work friends. Joseph Scrimshaw's here. And Joseph, welcome to your own feed.
Yes, I'm happy to be here as a guest on the show you've been doing on our mutual feed, ForceCenter. Definitely wanted to be here for John and Lacey being on ForceCenter, and I really love the thing that we're going to talk about, so I wanted to be sure to be here to celebrate with my special cup.
Yes, Star Wars Special Cups with Solo. As you can see on the screen, John Hoey and Lacey Gillerin are here from the Resistance broadcast. Welcome to ForceCenter, my friends.
Thanks
you. For having us. I have a reveal.
What's that? What's the reveal?
I was sent a pint glass.
Oh, nice. That's fantastic.
It's beat up the way a Han Solo glass should be.
Should be.
But good friend Kevin Smets sent me his last of 3 because he broke the other 2. But he's like, you will give this a better home. So it was sort of like Lando giving Han the Falcon, but he wanted to give me his glass Falcon. So cheers.
These are thick glasses, so that's impressive. Yeah, it's cool if anybody's watching on the YouTube version. I definitely have the Lando version that's clean, and you have the messy Han version from Kevin.
Yeah, it is. It's banged up. It's banged up. You have the one with the wet bar and all the nice amenities. The only
question I have, John, Kevin Smets is a sweetheart. We know this. His hugs are the best. Did he give it to you out of love or a little bit of protect it because I've broken the first 2? Please help me. Is there a little bit of...
It felt like, because he is one of the most thoughtful people I know, especially, in the amount of time we actually spent in person together, couldn't fill up a full day with, but being on the Schmodown team together and him like coaching me and while he's going through all the cancer treatments, like he was such I've never met someone that was that genuinely nice and kind. And I'm like, what's the catch here? Because there's always a catch, and there's not a catch. It's just Kevin Smets.
Yep.
And so he said, this was my last one. I broke the other 2, so I felt like there was probably a safer spot for this, and you're the person I wanted to send it to. So I now will keep this as far away from my kids as possible.
Oh, yeah.
I've already told the wife, no dishwasher, please.
No.
I will hand wash it. This might be the one time I drink out of it. I'm not sure, but I know I had to fill the glass up coming on with you guys. So thanks for having us. It's an honor to be on ForceCenter. Like I said when you guys were on our show, if people are going to start a Star Wars podcast in 2025, good luck to them, of course, but you should certainly be one of the people they model off how to conduct yourselves and handle yourselves. So it's great to be here.
Well, you both as well. Throwing it back at you, we had a lot of fun being on your show last one for Skeleton Crew, which seems like a lifetime ago. Yes. Holding down the fort, celebrating Star Wars. And the thing we're celebrating is 2018 Solo: A Star Wars Story, a movie we absolutely love here at ForceCenter. But when people think of Solo, when people think of hashtag make Solo 2 happen, they think of your show, you two, James as well. I want to go back to that film when it comes out. Iger mistake aside of releasing it at the wrong time. We can talk all about that later, but I want to hear from you all, your thoughts going into the film and then coming out of it, Lacey, the first viewing. What were you thinking going in? What were your expectations? Were you one of those, we don't even need this, no one asked for this, or was your heart open and wide?
I loved it. I was excited for it. I loved it. I actually saw it with John. It was the first movie I think we saw together was Solo, because it was right after I had joined TRB that we saw Solo.
Right.
And I loved it. And I don't think I've ever smiled more or been more hyped than the Kessel Run scene. There have been several times on TRB where we'll talk about like, oh, what's something we'd show someone that's never seen Star Wars? And I always say either the Jabba's palace sequence in Return of the Jedi or this. The Kessel Run sequence in Solo is just so fun and so kind of in your face, exciting, funny Star Wars that I just feel like it's a perfect sum of all the things that I love about it. The only exception is there's no lightsabers, but everything else in there is solid. But yeah, no, I loved it. And I thought it was great. And I know I can't speak for John completely, but when we walked out of the theater, we were both like, that was awesome. I'd love to see that again. And we just had like a lot of fun with it. And I know that fun now is being turned into a weird term with Star Wars. It was like, oh, you thought it was fun? It's like, yes, sometimes movies don't have to be serious. You could just have a good time watching them. But I loved
the historically dour Star Wars.
Well, people get really serious with it. So they're like, if this didn't change my life, then it doesn't matter. And it's like, that's not true. But Qi'ra was one of the best characters they've introduced, I think, in the Disney era, by Emilia Clarke. And the Lando casting was perfect. I loved Alden's Han. I at first, I was one of those people that really went into it being like, I don't know, how do you top Harrison Ford?
Sure.
And we all have to remember that, first of all, Harrison Ford signed off on it. He was like, this guy was amazing. Go see it. And two, he didn't try to do like an impression or anything. He made it his own. And I would love to see him play it again, which is ultimately what led to make Solo 2 happen. I can't take full credit on it. John is the one that really kind of pushed that whole idea. I remember when he brought it up to us that he wanted to do this campaign, I was like, okay, this is kind of stupid, but sure. And so we then did it as like a logo and then like had fun with it. And then I was like, you know what, why don't we make it a day? And then it became this bigger thing than we thought it would be. But I'll let John tell that story. But yeah, I will openly admit that and I've always been straight honest about this, that I was always like, I don't know if I'd make a campaign, John. And then it's turned into this thing now that is synonymous with TRB, but it's been a ride.
Quite a ride. Quite a ride. No, John, I want to hear the origin story of did the hashtag come, like, did you walk out of the theater and say, I got an idea?
No. So I remember watching the Super Bowl trailer and actually being excited but a little underwhelmed. I'm like, that's an interesting way to like introduce Han Solo. And I was like, okay, it's Star Wars. I'm getting ramped up. And I go to the theater, opening night, local theater, me and Lacey. And I walked out of the theater just happy, smiling, had a great time. Also, at the same time, felt like I learned a lot about why Han is the guy we met in A New Hope, which we'll get to later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the Make Solo 2 Happen thing, I would just like, we would always like fire ideas off at each other. And like Lacey said, sometimes it's like, that's so stupid, And I did it as, I was like, we should make a t-shirt. I was like, let's make a t-shirt because nobody, like, it already bombed, so to speak, or whatever. Like, nobody's thinking they're ever going to do it. So I'm like, it'd be really funny if we made a t-shirt that said Make Solo 2 Happen, because nobody's going to buy it. It's going to be funny. We're going to have two of them walking around Star Wars Celebration. And then I went to New York Comic Con with the shirt on, and people start high-fiving me, like, yeah. And then one of us put it online, like, hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen, and then it just took off. Like, or it wasn't, we didn't put money behind it. It wasn't like a thing, let's push it. It just exploded on its own. And it became its own weird entity. And then once like Ron Howard and John Kasdan shared it, then it was like, oh, now it's a day. And then it just turned into this thing.
Yeah, in advance, we were kind of like, let's do a day where we just talk about it on the day that it came out, I think was the first year. Because there's been a couple of years now. So the first year we did it, I was just like, why don't we just make a day where we talk about it? Because we had seen some positive reactions from 2019 Celebration with Rob, what's his last name? Brudeau from ILM. And John Kasdan had made some reactions to our t-shirts online because we had posted a group shot of us at Celebration wearing it. So then that was like, yeah, let's make a day of it. And I remember we went into that day the night before being like, look, if we get like 20 people talking about this, like it's been an awesome day. And so when we woke up, I will never forget because I was getting ready for work at the time. It was like 7:30 in the morning and we get a text being like, it's trending. And we were like, what? And then it just blew up from there. And I remember I was driving home and unsafely started freaking out because I got an alert that Ron Howard had tweeted our picture with like a smiley face or something. And I called John screaming about it, being like, oh my God, this is a thing. And so many people got into it from Lucasfilm and Jonas and all these other people were bringing it up. And I will admit over the years, it's gotten kind of taken the wrong way as like a demanding thing, which it never was. It was always a celebration of what this movie is and how much we love it, with the idea of we would love to see more of it, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, we're still supportive of it. It's just we're cautious with who we nag about it, right, John?
Yeah.
And because they had plans to do more, and John Kasdan shared what the next chapter would have been about the syndicates, and it sounds like Star Wars Outlaws is essentially that, just without Han Solo.
Now that I'm into the game, it has that vibe. It picks up,
right? And so we didn't feel it as we're pissing off Lucasfilm or anything, because we're like, these were their plans. It just, if the movie made $800 million, then they're just gonna make it. So we were just like, we want them to do what they wanted to do originally. And then John Kasdan was like, yeah, this was my idea and stuff. So it came out of love. It came out of a tongue-in-cheek making a t-shirt, and just organically became this thing. But every time I watch this movie, I seem to enjoy it more and more, or see a little trinket or a little nugget that I'm like, oh, I didn't see that the first 50 times I watched it, but there that is. And, you divert your eyes, and it's a hell of a fun ride. It's a Lawrence Kasdan script, no doubt about it. And I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I think you guys did a real service with the Make Solo 2 happen. I totally understand the concerns you're talking about, right? Because there have been so many petitions that come from a demanding, like, this should not be canon in years.
Someone made a petition and was like, they need to do this, and we had to be like, no, this is not what we're doing.
Oh yeah, someone made like a change.org and we're like, that we did not do that.
We did not do this. Absolutely not. And then we got accused of like doing it just to sell shirts, and we're like, that wasn't it either. Like, there have been many things thrown around.
It seems it's cool to hear the story that you did it for, hey, maybe this will be fun, maybe this will be funny, whatever.
Maybe 10 people will talk about it with us.
10 people talk about it, but it seems like now that it is valuable for the high fives, like literally at the convention, but also I feel like that's the spirit of it. It seems like it was a really good way for people to go, hey, the official narrative, generally from critics and money people, is that it was a disaster. And I think the hashtag really helped a lot of people come together and go, hey, you know what? If other people don't want to come to the party, that's fine. But look at how many of us are here at the party. And I think that was a great service that you guys did.
Thanks,
it wasn't a disaster, though. Wasn't it Ron Howard's like highest money-making movie?
Yeah, it's all spin, right? I remember being so upset back in the day of like, that was in a time where the MCU was given a lot of grace. Those days are over. But like, nobody expected anything of Ant-Man, and it made way less than Solo, and everybody was like, what a triumph. And then everything is about what filter are you looking at it through? And I get it. The perception is, if it's Star Wars, it's a blow the doors off the roof blockbuster. But
I'm in the same kind of mindset of like, who cares about box office? Like, I'm not making money from this movie. Like, who cares? It's just wild.
That's so funny you say that, because I remember being at the panel for Light and Magic in Anaheim, I think it was, and Lawrence Kasdan had COVID or whatever, and he was like really pissed about it.
Like, so he couldn't go. Yeah,
he was via like video or whatever, and someone in the crowd that was not me yelled, "Make Solo 2 happen" to Ron Howard or whatever, and then Lawrence Kasdan said something to the effect of like, that, people are so obsessed with box office, and he's just like, does anyone know what The Big Chill made at the box office? He's like, as a writer, it's a way different vantage point than executives, and seemingly fans seem to be very obsessed with box office. And I understand it from a certain point, because you're like, oh, if this movie makes money, they're going to make more, and I love that. But sometimes you got to be like, the movie that makes the most money isn't necessarily the best one of that series. I'm not here to stake any claims that Solo is better than any other movie. I happen to love it. I'm not here to pit Star Wars versus Star Wars, but the double budget thing and the dual recording and filming and all that stuff, like that, as time goes on, that's disappearing. Like, it's like with The Force Awakens, like nobody's talking about Michael Arndt, or no one's talking about Colin Trevorrow's Episode 9 anymore. Right. And at least not where I'm at. I mute enough, I guess. But
also, reshoots aren't bad. Reshoots became this like villainized thing. We just talked to Christopher Ford from Skeleton Crew about it. But they reshot Rogue One, and everybody loves Rogue One. Rogue One's such a success. And then they're like, Solo, they did reshoots. I'm like, they do reshoots on every single movie. Every movie has reshoots or some type of change.
Or needs that one had more than most.
Yeah.
No, look, I think it's a case of the headlines got out in front of the movie. I think that's always going to be part of this. And yes, the double budget, there's things that you can look at. And I agree with you, John. It's something we've talked about on ForceCenter. of we're all part of this industry, this punditry industry, and glad to be part of it. But yeah, after a while, it's like we're John, you and I watch baseball. After a while, it's like, why are we worried about this stat? How about we just watch the game? How about we just see if there's fun in us in the game? And Joseph, the fun is part of the legacy. There's some deep themes here, but I'm just trying to even go back to our viewing and coming out, you, me, and Jen at the ArcLight. Like, smiles were on her face. Fun was present in this movie.
Huge smiles. Yeah. We went to the press screening. We had been to the Denny's event, as we talked about, which was very funny. And I still have the menu that they gave us to keep at the Denny's event. But yeah, when we saw that, I came home and Sarah asked me how it was, and I pretended to ride a bicycle, and she's like, "Oh, I get it." It's like really fun. Like, yeah.
How far around the house did you ride
a bicycle? And I was just like, she got my. I don't know why I gave my mime review. I think because I didn't want to say any actual words and spoil anything for her. But it's just like that feeling of that was so awesome, and now I want to go and pretend I'm Han Solo. And I think for me, I watch movies on multiple levels, and I think it's fine to watch movies on multiple levels, and I think it is an extremely fun movie, and I think it is one of the Disney era films that best emulates the original trilogy, serial adventure from one problem to the next. But I also think it emulates the original trilogy in that all of that is fun because we care so much about the characters, and I think we care so much about the characters because of the depth of theme. And I don't need to go on and on about it, but I just do want to say that I think that people don't appreciate how much of how deep the film is if you want to pay attention to that. And particularly for this moment, it is a story about every little character is imprisoned by crime that is being allowed to run rampant by a corrupt government, and every character but Han Solo is like, freedom's impossible, you idiot. And Han is naive and optimistic, but what if I could do things I wanted to do and enjoy my life? And everybody's like, you idiot. Everybody in that film is trying to free themselves. And even if you don't sit down with your college notebook and write an essay, I think people feel that. And I think that's why it makes it even more thrilling, because we like these characters and every one of them wants to escape. And so it's thrilling to watch them escape.
Yeah, anytime I talk to somebody who likes Solo, and they just like it or whatever, it's usually, it was a fun movie. It was fun. It didn't add anything to the blah blah blah. And then I think about Han Solo in the terms of the guy we met at Mos Eisley Cantina, the guy whose first words were his own name, the guy who was the bravado, I'm only out for me and my buddy, that's it, I want to get paid and get out. And then you realize all the people that he vested his faith, trust, and heart into in this movie burned him in this movie. You have Beckett, who was his father figure, clearly learned so many things from him, including shooting first, which led to Beckett's demise, which is a very tragic, beautiful scene, but also they did the thing. Then Qi'ra, of course, at the end of the movie, he watches her literally fly off out of his life, and Lando leaves him high and dry. Granted, yes, I guess it was technically his ship, but he left him there. So his friend, his mentor, the love of his life, all desert him. All he has left is Chewie, and that's why we get that pat on the back gif from Solo. And then he just gets hardened, so that at the end, when you see Enfys Nest go up to him saying, you can come with us if you want, and he's like, don't hold your breath, kid. It's like, there he is. There's that Han Solo. I want to see this younger version of Han Solo with that jaded mentality in more adventures. Hence, we would love to have seen Alden, whose star has risen since the movie, play him again. But I agree with you, Joseph, not to be long-winded on it, but I think there is more to this movie like you said, if people want to pay attention to it.
Absolutely is. I want to go to some of those moments and hear just some of your favorite moments too, but I did want to start with the naming sequence. It comes up a lot here. Much like Lacey, you don't want to speak for John. I never try to speak for Joseph or Jennifer, but I think we really love the scene. I always say, is it one of my most favorite scenes in Star Wars? No, but I just watched it about 20 minutes before we recorded and confirmed that, I absolutely love the scene. I absolutely love what it shows, the daily grind of the oppression of the Empire, the daily like nonchalant, we don't care, we define you in the way we want to define you, feeling of the Empire, and the push in on Alden's eyes, and in that moment Han Solo is formed. But it's one of those scenes that comes up a lot. It's one of the scenes that led to a rather big off-air argument I had at an old job that that kind of soured me on some things. But Lacey, I want to go to some of the big moments, but I want to start with this. What do you think about the name scene? Where do you go with this? Am I crazy? Tell me.
No, it's one of those scenes that's grown on me. I think at first I was kind of just so surprised that it was that simple, but at the same time, it being that simple is why it's perfect. I think it's an example as fans that we build up this expectation of like, oh, it has to be this, this, or this. Like, there's a deeper story here. There's all this background canon lore that plays into what the person's name is. And it's like, no, this guy just gave him a name. Like, that's literally what it is. And then it's about how he not only gets that name and becomes his own person, but then creates the lore and canon and story around that name himself. It's grown on me. At first I was kind of just like, oh, that's it. Cause like you're expecting something big. You're like, this is it. This is Han Solo. But I think it ends up being perfect because that's who he becomes.
Yeah. And it was Iger that went and said at some convention or meeting with investors that we're going to find out how he gets his name, and we all went like spiritually, and then it was literal, and that maybe set it up for a little bit.
I think you're spot on with that. I think Iger did say something like, "We're going to."
I remember talking about it on ForceCenter of like, he didn't mean that literally. He's being misquoted. Like I think I went all in for like, no, he doesn't literally mean that, and I was afraid of it because I think fans have resistance from the prequel days. I still have wounds from the prequel days of don't explain everything to me. We don't want to know where Darth Vader came from. We don't want to know where C-3PO came from. And I think I still had to like, man, I don't want to hear about it if people and they didn't like to know. But the actual scene, Drod Mundbrin, who are your people? Beautiful, painful line. And I think the scene is fantastic. And the only thing about it is that sort of meta. Did we need to know where it came from? Like, if you put that aside, the scene is clear and meaningful.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those moments that, as a fan of the movie, to non-Star Wars fans, that's the thing I have to like. Oh, I got to defend that now. All right,
sure,
here we go. You know,
I get it.
If you think about it, like you were saying, Ken, you know, these fat cat Empire guys, they're probably, you know, punching the clock, leaving, coming back, and he's like, all right, I got to name the 700th person today. He's like, all right, you don't have anybody, you don't have a name, you're Solo. And then this just throwaway Empire guy giving him this throwaway name because he couldn't care less, and then him making it a legend. Because all throughout the rest of Han's story, you hear people saying like Solo or Captain Solo and Han Solo, and they relate that name with torment if you're a bad guy, and then it carries on like Lacey said. Obviously Ben Solo and everything thereafter. So he took a name that was a throwaway just to get him down the line and created a legacy out of it. And I don't know, are there other Solos in the galaxy, or was he the only one? It's just like one of those things where it's like you hear Solo and you're like, oh, you are the Han Solo that flew with the rebellion, and he's like, I used to be, and it's like it's all there now.
Yeah, absolutely. Other favorite moments? When were you hooked? What were the early moments in the film that maybe hooked you, John?
I mean, pretty early on, I think I remember laughing pretty hard when they were in the speeder trying to get away, and he tries to do the maneuver and he doesn't make it to the end, and he just sort of like it drops and he looks at her like and I'm like, all right, there we go. It's Han flying by the seat of his pants, not knowing what he's doing, hoping he gets through it, and he's like, well, that didn't work, let's figure something else out. And just how it moved, it was just like such a fast movie from it's the most George Lucas movie ever, because it's just fast. From the moment we take the fade out from the crawl, it's him hot rodding a car. Come on, baby, come on. You're like, whoa, we are going. Just like it's a hell of a ride. So I think early on, like the Corellian chase is when I just remembered thinking like, I hope this movie is 3 hours long, because I am already having a great time.
It's shot so well. Bradford Young's cinematography is still one of my favorite in Star Wars. Like, I wouldn't mind if everything kind of looked like that. And or Rogue One, they're kind of close. Loved how Skeleton Crew looked, and it isn't, again, contrast compare. I love the colors, even the choice of the natural lighting in the lodge and everything about it. It works for me. Doesn't have to work for everyone, but I was in right from the beginning with you as well with that chase.
It would have helped if it worked for projectionists, or if projectionists were taken seriously. I mean, it was not Bradford Young's cinematography, but the way like a lot of AMCs are run just on autopilot, and don't get bulbs changed and things like that. That's I think another of the sad tragedy of like that things were. The film was too dark for some people because it wasn't projected correctly for the awesome job that the cinematographer did.
Yeah, I remember I had a conversation with a friend who was like, I couldn't see anything, and the whole thing was blue in the first like 20 minutes. It was like, you're crazy. And then I saw another viewing and was like, you are not crazy. I couldn't see anything in that shot. Lacey, what about you? When were you like, fist has been pumped and I'm stuck here loving this movie?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Probably the first in like the order of the movie is when Chewie and Han meet each other for the first time, when he gets thrown down into the jail and he's going to get eaten, and then he's speaking horrible Shriwook, but then he does like the carbonite pose in the mud, and they pretend that they're getting beat up and stuff like that. That whole scene is just so funny, especially like the fact that it's like broken Shriwook when he's speaking to him.
Oh yeah.
I loved seeing their dynamic together. Jonas has picked up the mantle perfectly of Chewbacca. He is Chewbacca just as much as Peter Mayhew was. And then the shower scene, I laughed really hard when they're taking a shower together. Yes. It's just so comical. The other scene that really sold me was the sabacc scene with Donald Glover and all the creatures. That is one of the best creature scenes I've ever been able to view in a Star Wars story. I feel like a lot of times, and I said this about Skeleton Crew recently, they did such an amazing job with creatures in that show that I feel like there's been this like missing chunk of like whimsical, fantastical, cool creatures, puppets in Star Wars. Like Andor was one of the projects that I was like, where are all the aliens? Like what is going on? So this was one of those movies that when I watch it, I go, man, I wish they made more action figures about this movie, because there's like so many creatures in that scene that really sells it that it's Star Wars.
I really agree. I want a sabacc. I want to host a sabacc game in like I basically just want to get rich and build a sabacc room in my house. That's what I want.
That would be awesome. Fire up a cigar. Yeah. Lose all my money.
They teased all these creatures like Therm Scissor Punch for like ever. Best. And then they just didn't release any action figures about any of them. And I was like, come on. Like that's what people loved about Star Wars back in the day, was all these like random aliens and creatures that had nothing to do with the movie that were in like one scene.
Yeah, I want the Karj with card eating action. The little guy who chews up.
Yes. What hooked you guys?
Great question, Joseph.
Yeah, I had time to think about it. Honestly, the first kiss between him and Qi'ra. Because I had read the Han Solo books by A.C. Crispin, and I was curious to see like, well, what kind of beats do they are similar, and there's a lot of similarity that builds to who Han is, but romance was a big part of that, and I would like more romance in Star Wars. I don't need it in every story, but I feel like it is a part of that sort of that grab bag of mid-century genres that Lucas was working from. That romance was a big part of that, and a big part of Han Solo. And as soon as he got back from the hot rod incident, already beaten up.
We're making out.
And he's like, yep, me and my teen girlfriend are absolutely, trying to keep it quiet around the other poor orphans, but this is happening. This is not a chaste little relationship. This is for real, and we are in. Right? It made it's the romance, but it made it feel real, and like Han is a passionate person, and a passionate person who tries to say, I'm so emotionally cool, but he is very connected and is very desirous of connection.
Yeah, and that John Powell does the sweeping like Gone with the Wind like love theme on top of it. You're like, all right. Like
one of the best romances in Star Wars.
I just underrated for sure. Their chemistry was very good.
How dare you suggest it's not Leia? How dare you suggest it's not Leia?
It's a different type of love. First love.
It's early love.
That's true.
I want to get Ken's answer on this, but have you guys ever seen that? There was like a meme going around of when Leia unfreezes Han Solo, and she's like, "Someone who loves you," and he goes, "Qi'ra."
I have not heard that. God, that's amazing. That's amazing. For me, that's a great question. I love the chase. I love the look. I love Corellia. I think infamously in the early days, I had a little bit more Lady Proxima issues. Again, having just watched it right before filming, I was like, this is great. I just maybe wanted, instead of Linda Hunt's excellent voice work, I wanted maybe.
What did you say?
I remember I was stuck on that a little bit, but almost because like what you said earlier, John, about like the Solo name scene, a scene I love unabashedly, but you know when you're in a bar and you're about to have to defend that, right? You know when it's like, all right,
yeah.
there was a little bit.
Han.
I was yes, and by the way, Lacey, that's spot on. That's
You're
crazy.
welcome.
Could you leave a voice message in that so I could save it as an outgoing message?
Yeah, she'll be on Cameo.
Cameo.
You made that noise with your mouth.
And that whole I actually love, but so I was hung up a little bit, but also in the sense of where like I think I enjoyed it more, but I remember talking to some friends of mine who were about to see it, and I was kind of the beginning of the movie. I couldn't even say it. I was just like just get through it, and I don't even think that's accurate now. But what really hooked me, and this seems weird because it's late. But it's that moment with John Powell's music flying, where Han and Chewie are kind of talking and actually finally meeting, and that music's playing as the haulers flying over the clouds.
Yes.
A lot had already happened to the movie at that point. Now, let's be honest, I was probably hooked by the time they announced Therm Scissor Punch as a character. But there's just, and I still love the music. I play it in my car a lot. It's great to drive around and just fly along with the music. But there was just something about that this was a fun movie. The depth is there, but there was just so much heart in that moment. And these are two characters I've grown up with. These are two characters I love. And as much as I love the end scene where they kind of jump to hyperspace together for a lifetime of friendship and adventures, there's that moment I just remember sitting in the theater with a nod and a smile, going, "Yeah, this is
a cool moment." It's this unusual, like soft, like emotional music that felt like adjacent to Star Wars. But the more I watched that scene, I'm like, that belongs to them. That's such a cool moment, because that's really when they meet, because before that it's pure chaos. He doesn't know if this guy's really like his buddy. They're full of mud and dirt, and then they finally get cleaned up and have time to breathe, and they're like, "What's your name?" So that's really their first actual nice to meet you, moment.
Yeah. And it always worked for me. And it always, there's a lot of cynicism that was thrown at this film, and maybe still is. And I remember reading one little kind of mini review of that moment of, kind of an eye roll. Like, and then he learns his name is Chewbacca, and he's going to call him Chewie. And I'm just like, what?
Do people enjoy things anymore?
Yeah, I was like,
I genuinely want to know. I really want to know, because it seems like people just like being angry about everything.
Truly.
If you fold your arms across your chest, you can keep all emotion in.
Yes.
Hard enough.
Yes, like a reality show promo, Garage Pickers, just all the joys away.
All logic, no feeling.
And you had said it earlier, Joseph. I understand, especially with the prequel stuff. There was for our generation, it was like we had spent years dreaming of where 3PO came from, and then the fact that it was rebuilt from Anakin. Yeah, that maybe rubbed up against us a bit. Totally get it. I get it. But to your point, Lacey, just after a while, I was like I'll spot you maybe the Solo name scene. I got it. I think it has some depth, but if you don't got it, it's very overt. It's very defaced. But just like, oh, what's your name? Chewbacca? I'm gonna have to call you something else. Like, just smile. Or just get up and then go, this isn't for you.
I just want to be like, you could still be a dude and like it. It's okay. It's all right.
It is like that first moment. He's been fighting for freedom and telling everyone around him that he can get to this moment. And this is the very beginning of it. He's sitting there talking to that Wookiee, but he's free, feeling the wind in his face, going to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I tear up every time Chewie takes the seat for the first time next to Han.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I always tear up. When she sits down in his seat at first, I'm like, no, you did not. Get up. You get out of that seat right now.
Yeah.
Kessel Run is one of my favorite segments in all of Star Wars. It has the humor, the action, the special effects are wild. And you see Han taking his rightful place, and it just fits like a glove. Not OJ's glove, but check out that new documentary. It's pretty spectacular. But it fits. He feels comfortable hopping into that seat, like how he hops over. I loved the athletic young Han Solo. Like, I love all of that. Yeah. But then there's like these subtle moments, like when they're in what is it called? First Light? Is that the name of his ship?
Beckett,
Dryden Voss.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Something like
First
that.
lot. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
The trivia days are over, fellas.
Yeah. First Light is
But when Joseph pulling Drod Munbrun, like I forgot that name a while ago.
I try to go back to my roots of remembering things because I want to. And Drod Munbrun is like he's what makes the scene work, and I love that we gave him the least exciting Star Wars name humanly possible, because that's what's magic about that character. Is he's just a sniffling bureaucrat, and they give him a name to fit it.
That's true.
Luleo Primoc, the green guy that sings with the deep voice, is my fave.
Yes.
I mean, switching the focus of the interview to Joseph here for a second. Now, years later, so Lacey, John, leading into the series, Joseph had seen the character in the trailer, dubbed him That Weirdo, which I sometimes still think is his name. And I had seen the movie first. I think I was at the premiere and I saw it, and I just remember I can't spoil this. I can't wait to text Joseph, because he kind of not only was spot on and loving this character, but Joseph, you kind of said, I want him to be a singer. We had it was like, this is your dream come true.
I wanted him to be like a Bing Crosby Sinatra-esque crooner, because
that's what he's named after.
Oh my god!
Louis Prima. It's sad that his partner's not named after Leah Prima's wife, Keely Smith. But besides that, in the Cantina band has the jazz connection, so it wasn't that wild, but it just felt like that guy looks like he's going to be doing some Bing Crosby boo 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 boo. So great, love him. It's one of my
Chicken
favorite
in the
parts.
Pot is my jam.
It's a great song, right?
It is really good,
especially once once you get to the theatrical release of that. I was in the dark, and my eyes just popped open. Like, everything Joseph said is true.
What does he know?
He's gonna be so pumped when he sees this.
I was so pumped. I remember also, like, I loved the movie. When Maul came on, that felt perfect to me. And I remember turning to Ken and being like, "Yeah." Ken had already seen it, and I was like, "Okay, all right, they nailed it."
Now, Ken, did you see?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joseph. Go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, did you see Ray Park there at the premiere, and that give anything away to you beforehand?
No, I don't remember seeing him. I talked to Whitwer afterwards and was like, "You sly devil!" As I literally had 4 drinks in my hand. Was like, "All right," and like walked off. So.
Sorry, Joseph.
No, I was just curious what you both thought of that, because that was the an era of Star Wars discussion too, where people about talking about, well, they're afraid to connect canon, they're afraid of lore, and then they put in Maul, which I thought was absolutely perfect, but also incredibly obscure and confusing if you weren't an all-in Star Wars fan. So I was very curious how you both felt about the Maul of it all. Lacey?
I have a funny story about that. So, my husband does not like Star Wars at all. I love Star Wars, have loved it my entire life. He does not. Okay. The one joke that he makes is, he goes, "Is that the one with Darth Maul?" And that's the joke he always makes. So he went and saw Solo with me, and we're sitting there, and Maul shows up, and I turn to look at him, and he's just like, "Who is that?" And I was just like,
"Oh, come on."
We left the movie, and I was like, we're talking years of this joke. Like, is that the Maul? Is that the one with Maul, right? Maul, Darth Maul? I was like, that is literally him. And he was like, but he died. And I was like, I mean, he's not wrong.
I get that too. Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was my joke, is that I was like, here's this never ending bit that just didn't snap in place. didn't make it. I loved it. I like how they did it with Whitwer, and then also with Ray Park. I thought it was a nice kind of connection with both of them who've played the character. And I think it was a nice little tidbit for fans of the animated series. Like, that is the payoff of watching those other series, that you're in on the inside joke of someone that then has to figure out, wait, how did he come back?
Yeah, my friend Chad texted me. He's a Star Wars fan, but I would, like, without using that term, casual, general Star Wars fan, not as passionate as we are. And I believe he texted me after he saw it and said, So wait, Solo takes place before the prequels?
Yeah.
Because he didn't know that Darth Maul survived, so he just assumed anything. If that guy's showing up, then and I'm like, no, man. So he comes back with robot legs, and then he's like, I'm like, it takes place after the prequel story.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
How many sets robot legs? 3? Come out.
I remember what my first reaction to the scene was. I remember, I think we hear the voice first, and it's behind him, and I didn't recognize it at first.
You were sitting next to me, and you went, what?
Yeah, so did I? Yeah. Because then when it reveals his face with that hood on and
you went,
all that,
whoa.
yeah, I was like, what are they doing with this? Like, oh my God, like I can't wait to see what happens next. We didn't get to, of course, but it let, come to me on Dathomir, and it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
You see it in her eyes.
You see the lightsaber shining in her eyes, which was one of my favorite shots. And people are like, why did he light up the lightsaber? It's like for that shot right there.
Yeah,
so you can see
cares?
the fear in her eyes.
Yeah.
Intimidation. It's
cool.
Yeah, it's like in a mafia movie. It's like, if you don't get me what I need, you get the gun and you go like that on your head, sort of thing.
Yeah. Why did they cock the gun if they're not going to fire? For intimidation.
I think, John, I had a similar reaction to you, where it was like, I wasn't. There's always these Star Wars moments. We just had a lot of them in Skeleton Crew where you're like, they're going to see someone. Is that going to be blank, or is it going to be someone we know? And I think I had that little moment, and then I just didn't pick up on it right away. And I had like the 6-year-old reaction, like, "Oh my God!" Like just like, "Oh, they did it!" Oh, so cool. But I had to deal with that too. I think we all probably had to deal with that with the casuals in our life, Star Wars fans who had the. Wait, hold on. This is before. I thought Han was born before Phantom, or after Phantom,
right?
Which might have been, I don't know. As much as people, especially back then, wanted it to be completely connected to lore and build to more things, which I understand. I really do understand, and I'm okay with some of that stuff happening. This was kind of a lesson in that, where not everyone watched the cartoon show on Friday nights. Not everyone watched that, and you got to explain.
Right.
I mean, when I was little and I saw Phantom Menace in the theaters, not to date myself, but when I came out of the movie theater, I turned to my dad and was like, "Where's Luke Skywalker?" Like, it's the same thing. Like, if you're not in it and you don't know the full story or fully understand or grasp the timeline, and now especially with all these series and stuff, it's hard to follow if you're not in it all the time. But once you explain it, people are like, "Oh, that's sick," or, "Oh, that's really cool."
Doesn't it make you feel like a Star Wars super genius when you talk to your casual fans and you like thread everything together and you're like, dude?
I feel really smart. I remember I had to explain the timeline to someone at work once. Like, this is years ago, before COVID, wild office spaces.
Remember those?
I would, not anymore. But I had to explain the whole timeline with Rise of Skywalker coming out, and I did the whole thing, like where Solo was. I have never felt more smart in my life.
Yeah. My favorite is when people are talking about it, and like, how does that work? Does that make any sense? I really like going, do you really want me to say? I just want to make clear. I have no need to Star Wars explain. Was that fun and rhetorical, or do you truly want the chart?
You got to size them up and make sure you don't just start talking for 30 minutes.
Do you have like 26 minutes to sit here?
Yeah. My buddy Matt Key, former host of Marvel Movie News, like that. Whenever we go see a Marvel movie together, I'd have to all right, I need my 2 minutes in the corner with you. And go. Just set me up. I want to talk about some of the characters we love here, too. I am playing Outlaws right now. I was a little late to the game. Having a lot of fun. I think I just pissed off the Hutt Cartel. I don't know. But I'm trying to curry favor with Crimson Dawn because I absolutely love the character of Qi'ra. And Qi'ra is part of this film's legacy. It's part of a character that people love that has gone on in wonderful ways. I still want to see Emilia Clarke live action Qi'ra. I absolutely want that. So I'll get one of them. Make Solo happen. Make Solo 2 happen shirts now. Hashtag plus Qi'ra. Want to go to Qi'ra with you, John, and then Lacey on what Qi'ra means to you, what you like about the character, and what would you want to see going forward with her? There's a lot of storytelling there now, which I'm thankful for. But going forward,
Lacey, you go first.
No, you go first.
All right.
We can play Shabbat
I
for
just
it.
think that's true. That's true. I have a little card up my sleeve though, so be careful. But
This little green silent.
yeah, I think what's great about Qi'ra is, we see that Han believed in love for one thing from an early age. When we meet him in A New Hope, he's, like I said, he's just completely jaded. He's completely isolated, except from Chewie. We get to see that he gave his all to somebody, and his love for her is what set off his trajectory on everything else that happened. I'm going to go get a ship. I'm going to go back to Corellia and stuff. And he really meant it when he saw her, when he thought it was Chewie tapping him on the shoulder. He's like, Chewie, will you? And he sees Qi'ra, and it's like this moment. It's just like out of an old classic Hollywood, the way it's shot, the haze on it, her hair, everything. And then he gives her this big hug, and the music lifts again. I'm like, this is legitimately one of the most underrated romance relationships in Star Wars history, and we only get it for a glimmer in this movie. Yes, it's in the prequel book when they're even younger. It's they touch on it when Han's in Carbonite and she's working for Crimson Dawn and stuff like that. But it's this like quick flash glimpse of these two people, star-crossed lovers or whatever, who the circumstances of the galaxy prevented that from happening. And he does get that closure in a way, because he does get to go on one last adventure with her, and he thinks, because he's still naive and maybe like that puppy love stuff at the end when she's like, go, I'll be right behind you. I think he really believed that. So then by the end, when he sees her fly off, he's like, oh my God, like I can't trust anybody anymore. If I can't trust Qi'ra, I can't trust anybody. And it's like one of those moments in this movie that often gets swept away as this just light, fun romp. If you don't want to be too serious about Star Wars, it's like, no, that's a really heavy duty moment. If you've ever been in love, had your heart broken or anything like that, like Han just went through that, and we watched him watch her. And that shot where the music gets sad and he watches her fly off, and then Chewie just like best friend style pops up out of nowhere like, dude, you're going to be all right. That is a big moment, especially after what happened with Beckett, which, and again, like, however long we talk, I'm going to keep saying a moment's my favorite moment. That's one of my favorite moments. And Han killing Beckett is also one of my favorite moments. But sorry, Qi'ra, great character, very important for Han. Also, I would like to agree with you, Ken. I would like to see Emilia Clarke back, because I think she loved playing the role. I think everyone in this loved playing it. Obviously, we know Donald does too, but I agree. I would love to see her back.
Absolutely. Lacey, this femme fatale character that became much more, which was part of the little story, a little dig at Lord Miller there for all they said was be femme fatale. And Emilia Clarke brings so much life to this character. What's
really
your
does.
thoughts on Lady Qi'ra?
She is tough, she's strong, and she's a survivor, which I think we see time and time again as like one of the biggest themes in Star Wars. Found family, hero stuff is always big, but being a survivor, we just saw it with Jod. And being in Skeleton Crew, by the way, for those of you that don't know, that these people are kind of down on their luck in the galaxy, have been given a bad hand, so to speak, pun intended. And it's about what you do with that hand to get through the life that you've been given. So she is an orphan in this terrible situation. Then she gets left behind. Then she basically gets sold as a slave to this guy that will murder you any second. So she works her way up to become his like right hand commander, and she's kind of like waiting in the side to make her mark. And throughout this, I'm sure she did love Han, and I agree with you, John, that scene is heartbreaking on Han's side. I would argue that it's even more heartbreaking for her, because not only does she break his heart as the person that's her first love, probably her true love, I'm sure she doesn't fall in love with anybody else after that, but she's still stuck in the situation she's in. He's not. He's now free. She's has to now report to this guy that could once again kill her. And I can only imagine the terrible things she had to do to get where she is. But man, does she have a great sense of humor. And I love like the little comedic beats between her and Han, and then her and Lando, where she's like, oh, he's wonderful. He's so stylish. He's so handsome. He's a sports sportsing guy. And Han's like, who is this guy? Like, what? And she's like, he's just so attractive.
Prodigious.
Yeah. I love the scene between them in the closet, which we all know George Lucas gave notes on with the whole hanger, like dropping of the capes. I think she truly shines in the moment that she comes out to do the trade agreements off the ship with the cape on, and she punches Han and hands him the dice. That is like one of my top favorite moments in this movie. Like the little Force theme that plays, like the little moment there that you're like, oh, she is on his side. She's totally in, and she's going to do whatever she can to get Han out of this situation, because she knows he won't handle the other side of that equation of dying, and she won't handle it either. So her mind, from the moment they meet up again, is how do I get Han out of this? Because he can't get in too deep like I am.
Yeah. I think that's so great. I so agree with that. And I remember right after the movies, there were takes just kind of describing her as the villain or the femme fatale, and in a far lesser
She's
film,
more than that.
She would have just been the femme fatale, and she would have been like, yeah, life's tough, and I stabbed you in the back. But I love what you're saying. I think that's what makes the characters so powerful, is that there's this battle about, is it foolish to strive for hope? Is it naive to think you can have some freedom? And she's been trapped in a world where even when she's getting more and more power, she still isn't free because she's still trapped by Maul.
She has a brand on her. Yeah,
she has a brand on her. And even this big power move that got her one step closer to maybe having freedom, it is such a sacrifice. And I think that's what gives it such power to her. Be like, hey, I'd love to have Han by my side and go up against Maul, but he can't even know red lightsabers exist, or he's going to die on the end of one. I have to.
And it's a weakness to her to have him with her, because at any time he could be used against her.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's such a sacrifice for her too, to be like, I would love to believe that we could just fly around in the Falcon having adventures, but I can't believe that. And I need to make you believe that I just coldly left you, because otherwise you're going to come running to me with your naive fantasies like that. There's so much going on in that relationship. So great.
And she gives him the character gets an out to know that she does care about him when she covers for him by saying, like, all were killed, no one left, so don't go looking for them, they're dead. And it's like, okay, so she does still care about him, but she has no options. She had to do what she had to do. Han's heart still broken, maybe thinks she swindled him. He doesn't know what to think, but she didn't have a choice. Like Lacey said, she
signed off that call, that FaceTime with Maul, and started crying. I guarantee it. Ended it, cried, drank some Carillion whiskey, cried some more, then went to work.
Did what she had to do. All of you are saying some just beautiful things on this character I love. And we've really taken a deep dive into themes here in ForceCenter on not only the movie, but these characters. And Joseph, one of the things we've talked about is survivors, and then Han's view of it is usually breaking through it. Hers is usually, hey, maybe you can't win, but you can work your way up. And I was just in watching the movie again today. That's on display from the moment they're on screen. That is on display from the moment they try to leave with the hyperfuel. And I just love that the movie is so clear and has clarity of purpose. To quote Saw Gerrera, clarity of purpose of what it's trying to say about these two characters. And that's why I think she's so valuable to the story. It is Han's origin story, but now it's safe to say this is part of Qi'ra's origin story as well, as the character lives on or continues in storytelling. And you don't want to piss her off in the Outlaws. I haven't. I try so hard. Oh boy, I try so hard. One of the things I want to talk about here in the time I have you all here, and I know we could probably talk for a lot longer, but this movie brings us joy. This movie, I think, for the most part, probably brings our listener base in general joy. I think if you love Solo, you're usually going to seek out Resistance Broadcaster ForceCenter to find a nice place to love it. It was a weird time, 2018. It was a weird time. We were a couple months removed from The Last Jedi, but everything around The Last Jedi was really picking up. And I do mean the conversation was getting into political and social areas, even if we weren't fully aware, or the general public was aware. Like, people with bad intentions were used in the conversation, and it was getting kind of getting dark and disturbed. And this movie comes out, and I'm still fist pumping. I'm having fun. and then you kind of come out of the theaters collectively, and that cloud is there. And again, not everything's perfect. We're not saying that you have to love everything we love or love it the way we love it. We've all experienced that too. But how did you two deal with, as a show that started this hashtag, was kind of carrying a flag for this film? How did you deal with that storm? Did it get you down? Are those moments where you're just like, am I the one who's wrong and crazy? Should I not love this? How did you all get through that on your side?
You go, John.
I don't know that are you talking about like vitriol towards Solo or just in fandom in general?
Fandom in general, but specifically for Solo, because it was such a fun film and all of us are on board with it. And you come out and you just want to talk about it. But
yeah.
John, you and I won't go into details. I don't want to go into details, but there was one incident. You and I were in a bar together with someone, and they wanted to fight with us about it. And it's just like exhausting. It's exhausting.
They did? Someone tried to fight you?
Exhausting. Not physically. I would have, but not physically.
Name.
Let's go.
But
them out, Ken.
It was just one of those things where it's just like, this is exhausting. I just want to enjoy it. But back then, in 2018 particularly, specifically, it was like, you couldn't stop the tidal wave of just bad faith arguments over it, or the box office, or Lord Miller, and this, that, and it's like,
yeah, that's true. I think. I mean, it's hard to remember because I don't know if this is how everybody is, but as time goes on, I don't remember that stuff as much as I do like the stuff I take with me. But at the same time, I do remember, oh man, it's like backhanded support for the movie to take shots at like Kathleen Kennedy. It was like some of the stuff I would get. It's like, oh, it would have been a great movie if she didn't hire those directors first or fire those directors stuff. And I'm just like, the movie's here now, man. Yeah. Like, you didn't go see it because of what reason? Because you heard this, or like they didn't hire Anthony and Gruber to do an impression. Like, the Gruber stuff I got a lot. Like, that was one thing. We still do. We talk about Alden Ehrenreich, and people like, Anthony Gruber should have played Han Solo. I'm like, did you see Age of Adeline? Did you see the voice?
First of
no
all,
offense to him at all.
And they said no.
Look, zero. No, if this isn't a roast of Anthony and Gruber. He starred in a major motion picture. He played a young Harrison Ford. I will never do that. I could never do that. So all respect to him. But he got popularity for literally doing an impression of Han Solo in A New Hope. They went a different route. They hired this kid with a lot of talent. So I think it was a lot of the, like Lacey said earlier, it's like with the Indiana Jones thing, it's like, it's only Harrison Ford. And it's like, well, what about Sean Patrick Flannery? What about River Phoenix? So it was a lot of that. But then there was also people who just said they didn't go see the movie because they didn't like The Last Jedi, or they heard it wasn't good and all that stuff.
And it's like, and they like it.
So you're not going to go see a movie because of some stranger that you read online said, you shouldn't go see this movie or something. And then as more time went on, because like New York Comic Con was October that year, I just wore the shirt because I wanted to wear the shirt. And I'm walking around and people are just like, dude, high five, high five. And like 99 to 100, it was positive. It was really cool. And then there's the one guy, like, I'm walking by, he's like, Solo sucked. And I'm just like, all right,
I'm walking here. Yeah,
I'm gonna keep walking. Yeah. But no, we didn't really have to navigate too much because I think as more time went on, people either found the movie or they said, even like I think Jermaine Lucier didn't like it at first, and then he did one of those like, I guess Solo was actually a lot better than I gave it credit for. And you see people coming around on the movie when you detach yourself from the temporary nonsense around the production and the marketing and stuff. Like, take more distance. This movie's going to keep aging really well because it's the most George Lucas Star Wars movie since he sold Lucasfilm, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with that at all. I really don't.
Yeah, I feel people.
That's the sigh of a Star Wars podcaster.
Yeah.
Well, this would happen on the show. I'll go on these impassioned things, and then I just think I like Lacey's just like, I don't know what to do after that.
No. That's not what I'm thinking. My thought is there's multiple variables that played into this situation. I would say the biggest kind of elephant in the room is The Last Jedi, and a lot of people didn't like it, and they're welcome to not like it. But that poured over into this, on top of it being right after Avengers and Deadpool, and people make choices in the movies during the summer of what they can afford to see or what they want to see. I do think that there's a piece of the interwebs or the internet fandom in general that after The Last Jedi, they went on a I hate everything Disney now phase. So no matter what happened in Solo, even if George Lucas showed up being like, this movie's amazing, like people would have been like, no, it sucks because they didn't like The Last Jedi. I would say the way that I've navigated it from the moment I joined TRB, which was kind of I don't want to say John plucked me from obscurity, but he kind of did. Like no one cared what I thought at any point, and then he was like, "Hey, do you want to?
That is not true.
Do you want to come talk about it on this show with us?" And I was like, "Sure." And then people are like, "Oh, so like this girl has a voice now?" So I've heard everything there is to hear from Solo, from being a woman to liking Star Wars to I somehow like Twilight now. I've heard everything.
So, wow, that took a turn. That took a turn.
I have no judgment against Twilight. Do you like Twilight, or is there a Twilight conspiracy?
No, like the threads always went online. It was, you're not a real fan. You only like the sequel trilogy. And then I would reply, actually, I grew up on the original trilogy in like 97. I'm not sure what you're talking about. And then they'd say, you like Twilight, you're an idiot. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with Twilight. It changed blockbuster movies forever and stars a lot of really respected actors. There's nothing wrong with it. I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan. It's fine.
The baseball scene's rough. That's all I'm gonna say.
Like that's usually how the thread went from like I liked something to all of a sudden I'm a fangirl, and then that means my opinion doesn't matter. Anyway, so Solo, long story short, anytime someone said something to me about Solo, like, oh, Solo sucks, like on Make Solo 2 Happen Day, and then we did it, I think 2 more times, right, John? We've done Make Solo 2 Happen Day just as like a fun thing to do.
A nice little trilogy, I think. Yeah.
Every year that we've done it, we've gotten more, I would say, hate than the first year that we did it. It seemed like a lot more people were on board first year. Then the second year, they were kind of just like, no, I'm not. They'd either not say anything at all when they said something the first year, or they would be like, no, this movie sucks. And then the third year, it was like, oh, they're still talking about that. And I'm like, yes, I like this movie. I don't stop liking it a year later. Like that's still a thing. But it doesn't faze me. Like if you want to hate it, you want to not like it, like okay, sure. It doesn't necessarily offend me as a person. Like John said, it's just kind of like the arguments, or you guys have said as well, the arguments that people make about it are silly to me. They're welcome to have those opinions, but they just don't really make sense. Like, why are you arguing on behalf of a box office or Kathleen Kennedy or whatever? Like, are you invested in Lucasfilm? Are you a stockholder? Does it affect you personally? Because at the end of the day, the movie that came out of all those situations is awesome. So if all those things didn't happen, you wouldn't have gotten the movie that we got, which I love. So I'm not really sure the personal connection to a lot of fans of, oh, that movie's so bad. And I'm like, why? We didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for anything.
Oh, that's always the worst.
I didn't ask for Lucasfilm to get bought. I didn't ask for, Free Willy 7. Like, I don't care. Like,
you didn't ask for Twilight. You didn't ask for Twilight.
I know. I do understand the argument of we didn't ask for this.
Same.
All I picture is like Bob Iger, like going to someone's house, not being like, so I'm thinking of doing this movie. Are you cool with that? Are we cool?
Yeah.
Are you all right? And the person being like, actually, I'm not. And then he goes and makes it anyway. Like that's the argument they're making. Like,
and wasn't I could be wrong, but I've been saying this on the podcast, so I hope it's right. Just like lying to people. I'm pretty sure Solo was one of George Lucas's ideas. Like he wanted to do.
It was specifically Lawrence Kasdan's idea, which I remember. Like I so agree with you, Lacey. The who asked for this is like. Artists create. Nobody asked for the original Star Wars. In fact, if you had asked them if they wanted it, they would have said no. But
or Seinfeld,
was the one where, like,
or anything.
Who asked for this? Like, I know that's a cruel, sarcastic question, but the answer is the guy who made Han Solo famous, Lawrence bleeping Kasdan. Like,
right.
That's because there was all that sort of like that argument of it's soulless. They're just going back to the characters and all that. I get it if you want to have non-legacy characters, but I think that is why the film has a lot of heart of one of the people who is responsible for creating the legend of Han Solo, along with Lucas and in Harrison Ford, thought this would be interesting. And it bothers me when people are like not wanting artists to explore what artists are interested in.
Yeah.
That's the funniest thing about that movie that, like you said, that people argue against. Just because Lawrence Kasdan's the person that made it. So when people are like, no one's even really into it that made it originally, you're like, actually, the guy that told it,
they go crappy writing. I'm like,
the guy that's like literally the voice of Han Solo.
Yeah, it's people that don't like the movie Silverado. They're against Kasdan and everything. Yeah, no, I think the actual like the rough, vague rumor story is it was pre-sale. I'm not saying a completed script, but it was old Larry, and at some point John comes on, and when Lord Miller pitched something to Lucasfilm, it was Solo based, and they said, well, we already have this, why don't you consider directing this? And that was kind of where it all started, and some of that I think was Iger's decisions over Kathleen Kennedy's. But
and didn't he agree to do TFA if they made Solo? I don't know,
but
I thought that was the story too.
I would love that Larry Kasdan in 2013-14 felt he had that kind of sway. I'm all for it.
Oh man, yeah.
You make Solo, I'll write for it.
I'd love to know how many stories Lucasfilm has been pitched that are the same story over and over again, because I feel like in the past few years we've heard so many people come forward to be like, oh yeah, I pitched them on basically the Mandalorian, of what the Mandalorian is now, which Jon Favreau pitched, and then this other director pitched, then this other person did Boba Fett, and you're just like, how many times have they been pitched like, hey, I want to do a Han Solo project, and then they finally were like, okay, sure.
Yeah. Joseph, we work together now here 10 years on the show, so I know how we handle it as a podcast. But out in the wild, how many fistfights have you been in over Solo?
Not as many in person, because I feel like I encounter more people who have heard it was bad.
Yes.
And didn't see it. I think almost the more frustrating thing I've had online and in person is like, well, it's so good. Why didn't anybody tell me? Like,
yeah.
People have been trying to tell you to give it a chance. I think maybe one of the reasons that I'm focusing on some of those specific arguments that come up is that I don't feel like it's like Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker or Acolyte, where there's just sort of there are specific critiques, but there's just sort of a wave of animus of passion and dislike. I feel like when people don't like Solo, it's because they either haven't seen it or they have some specific little thing they can't get past. But
it's usually Kathleen Kennedy, if you're wondering. That's usually the thing.
And I'm just done with that. A vast majority of that is sexism. There's good faith criticisms of any corporation led by person, but a lot of that is just like, I'm done.
She wasn't involved with Rogue One. I love Rogue One. It's like, no, she was.
She was the one that told him
the
to
president of the studio. You can't pretend the president of the studio was not involved in the one thing you like. That doesn't work. Sorry.
Does not. Well, as we start to close here, this has been a lot of fun. Like I said, we could go on forever, but I want to leave here on very positive notes. Thank you for answering honestly about just the fallout in that era. 2018 was an interesting time in Star Wars discussion land.
So long ago.
The fun that was so easy to find suddenly became a little harder to grasp, but we keep looking for those pinpricks of light. But we'll see if there's a Solo 2. We'll see if there's, I know there's rumors around animated shows or other storytelling that can involve syndicates and crime lords and Qi'ra and Maul and all those things. But as we move towards new eras, Donald Glover, if he ever gets to tell his story, I know a lot of people are excited at the time of this recording. Oscar Isaac just got announced to come back at Star Wars Celebration to sign autographs and take pictures. Now there's good reason to think you're going to fly over there. What What else are you going to do?
He needs another house. Ray movie.
Exactly. The legacy of the film, what it means to you, and not predicting or, throwing darts against the wall about what might come with Solo-related storytelling, but what would you want? What's the legacy of this project now for you, Lacey?
I would love to see it continued. I have hope that Donald Glover, who originally was doing seemingly the series, but they didn't lock it in yet, but then now he's like, yeah, I'm doing it with my brother. We're doing it. It's now a movie. Yeah. My hope is that the reason they're taking so long is because they're really putting together a great story, and I trust Donald Glover's opinions and creativity and his just talent that he's bringing to the table, and that we could see Han again and Chewie, because you can't really tell Lando's story without at some point Han showing up. So I hope that Han is a part of it in some way, but I would love to see the series continued. I'll never forget in 2019 at Celebration, Erin Kellyman was on the live stage and she said that she had signed on for multiple movies, that it was a series. And we were watching it in the hotel room and we all kind of screamed and we're like, there it is, they're doing more. You were whoa. And we haven't seen that yet, but I am positive that we could eventually. Lucasfilm is aware of the Make Solo 2 Happen stuff. They've seen the shirts. They've seen the sweatshirts. They've had conversations about it. We've heard people at Lucasfilm that have said that it's like on the board or the list of things that they would love to see more of. I just hope that's the case. And if not, this movie is a shining light in Star Wars for me. It's a joy to watch. It's one of those movies you can throw it on in any time. I would argue it's the most rewatchable one of the Disney movies they've made. It's just, you leave it with a smile on your face and you're like, I could watch that again. And there's something always you notice in the background of every scene, or like a moment, mannerisms, glimpses, just actions that the actors take that you don't pick up on the first 10 times you watch it, that you pick up on number 15. Yeah. But yeah, it's one of the reasons that I love the Disney era of Star Wars, and I look forward to more stuff like this. And I feel like Skeleton Crew was kind of in the same vein, like you had said earlier, Ken, that they look similar, but they also have that similar tone, that like light, comedic, emotional, serious moments at times, but then they really bring you back up with these kind of comedic, fun moments and then action, and then they bring you back down into the emotional. Yeah, I'm all about it. So hopefully we see more.
It's a big well said, John, and a lot of pressure on you.
I pulled out the Art of Star Wars book by Phil Shostak. That is really great. If anyone hasn't gotten this yet,
I love that book.
Like Solo,
yeah. Absolutely.
Check that out. But I love this movie, and I think maybe the Make Solo 2 Happen stuff sort of made us like a solo podcast. Like that's the podcast that likes Solo. And I think it just evolved into me loving the movie more because I'm just like inherently spending more time with it and stuff like that. And there's so many things we didn't even talk about. We didn't talk about the Convex scene, which is just like a classic.
Enfys Nest. I could go on about Enfys Nest for a long time. Yeah.
Oh, me too. Yeah, and like Donald Glover's Lando, like Lacey just said, just like one of those castings where you're like, yes, of course he's gonna play Lando, and he just crushes it. I love that line. Everything you've heard about me is true. He doesn't care if it's good or bad. He just wants to be talked about. Like that, all that stuff. It's just, there's so much in this movie. L3 grew on me. That was the one thing I was like, and now I'm like, I will fight you for L337. Droid rights. But I don't know. I'm not thinking, just because of the way the state of the film industry and box office returns, that we're going to get a Solo 2 movie. They seem to be pulling things back as far as series. They're doing a lot of converting of series to movies at Disney, so I don't know if there's going to be a series for Solo. So I think the path forward is maybe this Lando movie, if it does happen. Pulp Fiction, let's get Lando's story now, and then everyone else can be supporting character for him. Let's get Han and Chewie in there. Let's get Qi'ra in there. Lando could get mixed up with the syndicates too. Han's working for Jabba. She's with Crimson Dawn. What if Lando gets recruited by the Pikes? And then it's sort of like, we're friends, we were lovers, and now we're all fighting for this different crime syndicate. I think that could be interesting. We'll see if that comes to fruition. I hope it does, for the sake of seeing him as Lando again. But I think the legacy of Solo is that, to me, it's my personal favorite Star Wars movie since Return of the Jedi. I genuinely love it very, very much, and I think it will continue to age well over time, because in the real world, outside of the very specific pockets of social media, especially X, which seems to be fading, at least with engagements and stuff.
It's really a dumpster fire at this point.
Real people do, as Joseph said, I didn't see it, but now that I've seen it, I liked it. I wish I saw it in the theaters. Those types of things. I think there's more of that coming. So I think this is a movie that is going to age very well for Star Wars, and it's just a well-made movie. You got an OG Lucasfilm kid behind the camera in Ron Howard. You have the writer of Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, writing the script. You have John Williams, who made the theme for Han Solo. What more do you want? If you're an old school critic, it's like, this is a great movie. I love it dearly. I could talk about it for 3 more hours.
And John Kasdan has plans. He's already said online.
He's got the plans.
The kid's got plans.
He has the plans. What about you? What about you guys? What? Because you, like you said, you guys were a big Solo podcast as well. What do you think the lasting legacy of it is going to be?
Quickly for me, and I'll let Joseph take it home. I just, everything you're saying, I both really agree with in terms of just the rewatchability. It is the movie that's often on the most when I just have Star Wars on. I also put Rise of Skywalker in that category of just like, I love just having it on the background.
I love Rise of Skywalker.
I can jump in and out of watching it because of the vibes and everything. But it is, it is about the joy. It is about the look. It's about the feels, about these characters I love. Han is my guy. I'm one of those Han guys, and that has changed over the years to where it's all not always good that I'm a Han guy. I've learned things about myself, especially with old Han, and going back to the beginning has great value to me. And it's also this very it's a very political story in a Star Wars way, meaning if you don't want to pick up on it, it's not there, but it's there. It's there in every line. It's there in every moment. And we talk about the oppression of the Empire and the boot on the ground on everyone's neck, and the actual the wearing down of society under this kind of impression. It's important in terms of a Star Wars story to me, and that's part of the legacy, as well as the zip zang pew 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 zoom that we love so much. Right. It's all there. And again, I love being in it. I love watching it. I want to play Sabacc. It's my favorite thing in Star Wars Outlaws. So just sit down and play Sabacc. So I love it, and it's just fun, and that's part of the legacy for me too. The big thing is fun. But Joseph, from Denny's Diner to now, what's the legacy?
Maybe the lasting legacy is Lucasfilm not successfully trademarking Sabacc, so they had to release the Han Solo card game. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yep. There needs to be a spinoff about the cocktail robot that we didn't talk about that Lando gets the drink from.
Yep.
Endless great spinoffs. I think the great Qi'ra story is, Qi'ra versus Maul, Fate of Crimson Dawn. I in my head canon, she strands him on Malachor with a well-placed kick. I love to see that part of her story. I think for me, the legacy of Solo is that I think not too long from now, it will be that people are discovering that there was any sort of behind the scenes issues with the directors. They'll be discovering, and very soon, I think all 4 of us will have to deal with the annoyance of some young person telling us like it's a new fact. Did you know Solo didn't do well at the box office? There are people who It's a Wonderful Life has its weird story of it did okay at the box office and totally forgotten, only ended up being played on television a bunch in the 80s because of a rights lapse, and then it was rediscovered. And we're in a different world and a different time, so I don't know what the technological mechanism of It's a Wonderful Life happening to Solo, but I think Solo is the kind of film where It's a Wonderful Life could happen to it, where people what was it like? What would it have been like to be alive in 2018 and go to the theater with the hordes of people who are showering Solo with love because they just won't know. I think its legacy is it's going to be that kind of film. It's an incredibly tight script and incredibly well directed and incredibly well acted, and all of those things just make it something that's going to have a long, long life.
Long life indeed. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We could go on forever and ever, but I'm going to put a pizza in the microwave. And Joseph, you're probably going to do that too. So we'll share. We'll share.
Do it.
A virtual meal tonight. But John, Lacey, thank you so much. Thank you again for having us over on your show to talk Skeleton Crew. This has been a long time coming. Resistance Broadcast and ForceCenter crossover. Is happy to do it now and happy to celebrate Star Wars and Solo with you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us. This has been a really, really awesome. And people have been asking for this to happen. So I'm happy that it finally did.
Absolutely.
It's an honor.
I'll have some links down below as always. But you guys not only talk Star Wars, you talk general pop culture too with your Nerdy and Nice podcast. John, tell us all about that,
thanks,
where they can find it.
Yeah, so Nerdy and Nice, it's on its own podcast feed. Apple, Spotify, it's also on the TRB YouTube channel. And Nerdy and Nice Pod on social media, and then TRB is TRB Podcasts, and TRB's on all podcast apps, and youtube.com/@TRB Podcasts. And yeah, it's all about having a good time. You know, like Ken, you were alluding to, the real world is a little dicey, and the escape to the galaxy far, far away means more to me now than maybe it did 6 months ago, and it's always going to be there for us. And stuff like Solo, like I honestly may go upstairs and pop it on to close out.
Me too. Me too.
Thank you guys so much for having us on. Let's not make this a one-off. You guys are welcome back to TRB anytime. I know schedules are crazy, but I am glad to see that both of you are doing well with everything that happened in California. So my best to you and your families as well.
Thank you so much. No, maybe we'll even go on your Nerdy Nice and talk about things that aren't Star Wars related.
Yeah, we love that.
Love to do that.
Absolutely.
You know us out there if you're watching and listening. Thanks for following us here at ForceCenter. You can find us on Blue Sky at ForceCenter Pod. We have Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, but I'd say we're not as active there right now. You can find us on Blue Sky. You can support us at patreon.com/ForceCenter. You can get merch at TeePublic or the Fourth Wall Shop. Links down below here on YouTube. If you're on YouTube watching us, subscribe if you haven't already. We appreciate that. Give the video a thumbs up. That algorithm stuff, you know, it sometimes works, and I hate to admit it. But give us a like, all those things. Follow me at CatNapsuck or my website, catnapsuck.com. For right now, until I shut down my shop. I'm always close to shutting down my shop because it's really expensive. It's really expensive to have a web shop. But I do have personalized copies of Why We Live Star Wars there. Love to get them to you. Check out the shop there. Joseph, where can they find and follow you and your exploits of making one of these darn motion pictures?
Yeah, editing away. It's fun and challenging. You can find me on Blue Sky in particular, and you can get a link to my weekly blog, Finish Your Monsters, and more info on all the film stuff I'm working on my website, josephscrimshaw.com, as Solo says in one of my favorite quotes, the movie Solo. Do it, do it.
Do it. Do it. All right, that's it. We'll see you. Thanks for celebrating Solo, because Solo is why we love Star Wars. See you next time.